Let's move into a demonstration now where we implement BGP. What we're going to do here is build a BGP peer with our internet service provider, and then we're going to use that peering relationship to learn the default route from our internet service provider. Then we're going to do some examination of what that looks like. The network we're going to use here is a small subset of what I used during my explanation of how BGP and a redundant internet connection works. Here, though, we're not going to do anything redundant. We're just going to have a single internet service provider here. We'll use TCAP's ISP as our sole ISP here. And these are all just made up anyway. This is a fake lab environment, and I've actually put the configs for both routers in the exercise files for this module. In addition to IP addresses, we're also going to need autonomous system numbers. Now, the autonomous system numbers I've chosen here for Miles master editing is 65,010, and then for TCAP's ISP is 65,042. Now, those AS numbers that I'm using here, those are private AS numbers, just like we have private IP space in IP version 4. We have private autonomous system numbers. And the private autonomous system number range is from 64,512 through 65,534. So my AS numbers here are within that range, meaning that if I accidentally try to build a peering relationship with somebody else, it's definitely not going to work. And regardless, in order to get peering relationships to work in BGP, both routers that are trying to peer up with each other have to have explicit configuration stating that those two routers should peer up with each other. We'll see that configuration in just a moment here. So to give a more precise and easy to follow drawing of what I'm doing here, we have our two routers, MME, Miles Master Editing, and then TCAP over there. I have the AS numbers listed. What we're going to do is advertise on MME our 203.0.113.16/29 network. And then on the TCAP ISP router, we're going to advertise our default route to the internet, as well as the networks that are directly connected to TCAP's router. Let's take a look at how this configures. So I'm connected to my workstation now. If I open up command prompt, what I can do is ipconfig, and we should see here that 203.0.113.20 is my IP address on this workstation. I can ping 203.0.113.17, my default gateway, but I am unable to ping anything on the internet. If I ping 8.8.8.8, we're going to get a message back from my default gateway saying, I don't know how to reach that network. And the reason for that is there is no default route on my router. Well, next what I'd like to do is connect to the MME router on the console port. So I have my cable connected here. Let's open up PuTTY. And first thing I want to do is take a look at the routing table. So let me log in here. And we can do a show IP route. And what we should see is two directly connected networks. One is on Fast Ethernet 00 connecting to TCAP. The other is on Fast Ethernet 01 connecting to my workstation here that I'm working on. Right now, I do not have a default route configured. If I issue show IP BGP, it's going to say BGP is not currently active. Well, let's go over and take a look now at the TCAP router and see what that looks like before we implement BGP on the MME router. So let's log in. And if I do show IP route, we should not see any BGP routes here because right now my TCAP router does not have any BGP peers connected. Now, what I do have though is I have a directly connected network, the 198.1.10.0/24 network. That's my internet connection. I chose the 198.1.10.0 network. That's a documentation or testing IP address. It's not routed on the public internet. And I'm just using that in my home network here. I do have that set up to use network address translation so we can still talk to the real public internet. I do have a static default route there configured as well to point to my next hop to the internet. If I do a show IP BGP, what that'll show me is it'll show me the networks that my router is going to advertise here. And my router is going to advertise network 0000, which is my default route, and then network 198.1.10.0, which is the network that's connected to the public internet here. If I do a show IP BGP summary, this will show me lots of information, including the local autonomous system number and my router ID. It's also going to show me my neighbors. Now, right now, my neighbor here is listed, and it's saying that my neighbor is going to be 2030.113.82, and that autonomous system number for my neighbor is 65,010. Right now, the up-down, have never been up or down, which means that we've never connected BGP to this. The state here is active, meaning that it has the potential to build a neighbor relationship, but the never is saying we just haven't done it yet. Well, let's go back now on the MME router and configure BGP so we can get that default route from the TCAP router. So I'll move my rollover cable back over to the MME router, and we'll move into config mode. And here what we do is we're going to set up router BGP, and we have to give it an autonomous system number here. Now, this is similar to how we do it in EIGRP, except this time our autonomous system number is actually the assigned autonomous system number that we would have gotten from Aaron to implement in our enterprise network. Now, since we're using the private addresses here, or the private AS numbers, I'm going to use 65,010 as my autonomous system number for the MME network. Next, once I get into this configuration, what I want to do now is I want to advertise the networks that I own. So I own network 203.0.113.16 with the mask of 255.255.255.248. Now in BGP, we don't use the wildcard mask here like we do for OSPF and EIGRP. We're going to use the standard subnet mask. Next, we're going to need to configure a BGP relationship with the TCAP router now. Once I add this statement, we should build our BGP relationship, have that neighbor set up, and then we should receive our default route. So let's give that a try. The way we do that here is we say neighbor, and then we tell it the IP address of our neighbor, in this case 203.0.113.81, and then we have to tell it the remote AS number. In this case, it's 65,042. Once I do that, now BGP has enough information to build the neighbor relationship between MME and the TCAP router. That's going to take just a moment for that relationship to get built and to have the routing information transferred. If I do a show IP route right now, it's going to not show any information that's learned, but in a moment, we should get a message saying that there is an adjacency change, and here it is, for BGP saying that now our neighbor at 203.0.113.81 is now up. So if I do a show IP route now, what we should see is we should see a route to our two directly connected networks. We see a default route now. The default route we learned via external BGP. How do I know that I learned it from external BGP? Well, the external BGP administrative distance is 20. What I also learned via BGP is the route to the TCAP network connecting to the internet. So here now I have two routes that I learned via BGP. If I issue the show IP BGP command, we can see what networks I have learned about and which ones I'm advertising here. Here we can see that we learned about network 0000, our default route from 65042, as well as the network 198.1.10.0. We also learned that from 65402. Here's the network that we are advertising locally on the MME router to the TCAP ISP router. If I issue the show IP BGP summary command, this will show us a lot of information, including our neighbor. And right here, our neighbor is 203.0.113.81, the remote AS number 65,042, and then it tells us now that it's been up for 1 minute and 41 seconds. If I issue that again, we're going to see that timer creep up. Now we're at 1 minute 59 seconds. So show IP BGP summary and show IP BGP are going to tell us information about how BGP is currently operating. Let's go over to the TCAP router and take a look at what happened there after I established my neighbor relationship on my MME router. So here we'll do show IP route first, And show IP route, we learned about network 203.0.113.16/29 through external BGP from AS 65010. If I do a show IP BGP here, what we'll see now is we can see that we did learn about that 203.0.113.16 network from that AS 65010. And we can see what two networks we are advertising from the TCAP router as well. If I do a show IP BGP summary, here we get to see our neighbors. Right now, here is our neighbor at .82 in AS 65010. And now we've been up for about 3 minutes. This is really the extent of what I wanted to show with BGP here. Now, if I open up a command prompt on my workstation and I try to ping 8.8.8.8, which is Google's DNS server, I now get a response from that device and I can surf the web.